Edge. We're about to break down for you exactly what went on and when with Macys and this huge takeover on the Rebel's Edge. Well, we're back, Pete.
I'll tell you what, where in the God's earth are you now? I mean, honestly, the guy, Jared, do we have any kind of a feed? Do we have like a Santa thing with Jon where we can track him?
We need a Jon tracker.
I think we should have a Jon tracker.
That would be good. There'd be a lot of dotted lines all over the place, that's for sure.
I'll tell you what, you're a million miler.
I came up from San Juan, Pete. I've got a board meeting in Miami, and I met with some crazy guys this morning, including my the H factor water, hydrogen infused water. I met with Adam this morning, who's the proprietor right now, and we had a great discussion about hydrogen water, something I never thought I'd be talking about, Pete, but here we are.
Yeah, here we are. It's the world we're in, man.
Yep.
There's a pill, a drink, or a something for everybody. I mean, no matter what it is.
Pete's right. And folks, you're tuned into the Rebel's Edge. He, of course, is Pete Najarian. I am Jon Najarian. Jared is handling the clock. All of the graphics that you see, the sounds that you hear will be basically played by Jared. And with that said, exactly like that, Pete, let's dive into the macro minute. I'm going to say that ahead of the Fed in 2 more days, the 13th, Wednesday, we have the market's softer. In particular, a lot of tech stocks are softer. Apple's softer. Meta is softer. A number of the tech stocks are down 2 or 3%. What's your macro today, Pete?
I'm going to say this. Tomorrow is CPI day. And what is it that the Fed really wants to keep an eye on? They say is one of their best indicators. Well, that might be one of them for sure. We've been talking about data all week last week, Jon. Data continues to come in, and we're going to hear from the Fed. So it's going to be a busy week. It's going to be interesting. And maybe that's part of what's tying into this whole thing that you were just pointing out about some of these tech stocks that are giving back a little bit. It isn't that big, though. It's not that big. I mean, some of these names have made big runs, so it makes sense that they pull back a little bit. Nothing goes bottom left to the upper right straight and on a line. So I can understand a little bit of the pullback that we're seeing today. We'll see how that plays out come Wednesday.
Fed's going to stay on the pause, folks. That's a fact. Like Pete says all the time, the CME tool says 99.8%. That's pretty much a sure thing. All right, Pete, what about what's going on with Bitcoin? It was over 44,000 just hours ago, and then it had a $3,000 drop in just minutes. And it's still down around 41,400 now, Pete. So a couple $1,000 shaved off like that.
Yeah, fantastic futures, always fun. I'm going to give you a real quickie, but we've talked about it before.
Fantastic futures.
How about this? How about coffee? Now, just take a look at a chart sometime because it's always worth looking at some of these various different commodities out there and just see this will happen, Jon. The price of coffee has gone from 148 up to 183. So you know what's going to happen with Starbucks? They're going to charge a little bit more for their coffee. Even if it's pennies, it's just a little bit more. And if you knew how much they sold, you'd understand why those pennies start to really add up, let's be honest. But it's crazy. You never see prices come down when coffee comes down, but they always kind of lift them up a little bit more. The other day, I even took a test. $6 for many of the various coffees when I walked in there just to eye things up. But now those are more of the specialty ones, of course. But nonetheless, Jon, you never see that price come back down. So I think coffee is definitely something that's pretty interesting, and that is a fantastic future.
Indeed, it is, Pete. It's fantastic if you are down in Colombia, for instance. Let's talk about Macys, Pete, because Macys gets a $5.8 billion buyout offer. So if you're a long-standing shareholder of Macys, you're pretty happy to finally have some endorsement of your belief that this is a company worth owning. Take a look at the unusual activity that we saw for this one, because we did. They were buying January calls for like 24 cents, Pete, and those calls have gone boop to the upside. So if you want trades like that, go to marketrebellion.com/get started, and you could get started trading just like Pete and just like me, where we follow that unusual activity. And a lot of times it results in somebody did know a little something, maybe, Pete.
Well, and I'll tell you this, John, one of the somethings that people have known, and that's out there clear as a bell, has been the fact that there are some very heavy shorts in names like Macys, in names like AMC, in names like Peloton, right? So Macys has a pretty decent short, so that's part of it. But this is something much different. This, we were expecting it was a short. A matter of fact, that we've been watching a lot of call activity. I mean, just a gross amount of call activity buying the upside here in Macys. And now, what do you know? It's not necessarily just the shorts. Those shorts, by the way, they got to be crying, John, because they have been squeezed and squeezed in a big way, because with that buyout, we're talking $21 a share. So when it was down there at 14, which is when those unusuals were hitting that 10,000 lot, that's a pretty nice jump. And those options are definitely something, the 17 strike, they've moved pretty good, I would say. So that's a nice little profit there. But I'll tell you, it's interesting, John, because when you look at Macys for a long time, here's the thing that I'm looking at. Are they willing to accept this? Will they take this money? I don't know if they will or not. You know, this is a $24 stock back in January. It got all the way down to 11 in November. And now here it is back at $20. Maybe 21's not enough. Maybe Macys kind of shimmies around a little bit. Who knows? But if somebody is in this, that's why discipline matters. I think that you want to take a long look at how long you want to hold on to something, whether it's call, stock, whatever, because let's be honest, this is a pretty major move to the upside.
It's a huge move, and it is an endorsement of the brand itself, I think, Pete, and the fact that who has done well in the most recent retail, reports. It's people that have a variety of things to offer, not just one thing. In other words, Abercrombie and Fitch, you're only buying Abercrombie and Fitch there. American Eagle Outfitters, you're only buying that. You go to Macys, you get a little bit of everything. And those companies have been reporting better numbers than the ones that are one-trick pony or one brand, if you will. All right, let's talk about Cigna, Pete. These guys were trying to do a deal with Humana. Well, they may have finally decided we're not going to do it. And the stock's up 16% on that news. They wanted to build something that could be more competitive with United Health, UNH. And now they're instead just going to buy back some of their own shares, Pete, and the stock just zoom from the lower left to the upper right.
Well, and they reaffirmed, John, 2023 numbers. They reaffirmed the 2024 numbers. Those are big numbers, talking about a little underneath $25 a share for 2023, $28 a share for 2024. But on top of that, to your point, they already had buying in place, right? It was about $1.3 billion worth of buying of their own shares back, right? Now they add $10 billion to that number. And why are they doing that? Because the CEO says, you know what, we're too damn cheap. We want to own more of our stock, and they're willing to jump in there. So as they pull away from one investment, they're investing again. But where are they investing? They're investing in themselves, which I think is a really interesting move here. Says a lot about what they want to do. They still will have cash, John, and that cash, they're looking for some bolt-ons now. Instead of going huge, they want to get some bolt-ons. I think it's a pretty good strategy. It makes me want to look at Cigna for a little while longer and try to figure out exactly where their stock could potentially go. I like seeing that size of that buyback, though. That's a monster.
$10 billion, folks. Yeah, it is a monster. All right, let's take a look at something that we mentioned with the fantastic futures, and that is Bitcoin. Any Bitcoin-related stock, Pete, is down literally double digits today, whether it's Riot, whether it's Mara, which is Marathon Digital, whether it's MicroStrategy, MSTR. All of these stocks are getting cracked because when you're Bitcoin and you lose let's call it 7% like that, Pete, people get nervous and they reflect that nervousness through the trading of these shares.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, John, the amazing thing has been the run in Bitcoin, absolutely extraordinary because of the fact that it struggled at 37,000 multiple times, just couldn't stay above that 37,000 level until it did. And then it started to make that move, and it was a rapid move up over 44,000. Now you've got this pullback. So what we're talking about, we say this all the time, there are beta names out there that are attached to just about anything. And in this particular case, we're looking at a lot of those various miners, right? And some of those that are doing the transactions, whether it's Coinbase, Riot, Marathon, all those various names. Well, when Bitcoin makes that move to the downside, like we're seeing right now, back into that 41,000 level after being just above 44,000, yeah, they're going to move. Just like they moved to the upside and they outpaced the move of Bitcoin, they're moving to the downside. They're outpacing that move to the downside. So you've got to know that going in. You've got to be educated. That's what we try to do every single day, is educate people just a little bit more. We do it on our site all the time. We've got great educators in just about everything. But that is one thing that you've got to understand. And that's why discipline, John, is always the magic word, because when you get a move from 37,000, you get up to 44,000 on the underlying, in this case it's Bitcoin, and you get that kind of a rapid move to the upside and some of those others, that's where you've got to understand when you need to maybe take off a little bit because you've had a really nice run and not be a pig. That's something we talk about all the time, is understanding and having the discipline to know when you're going to sell and when you're going to buy and when you're going to trim and when you just need to cut it. All those things are important.
Yeah, having discipline is one of the number one things that Pete and I try to impart to all of you watching, is the discipline to cut losses and the discipline to take profits. So he's exactly right. All right, Pete, let's talk about MorphoSys. Never heard of this one before, but it's a multi-billion-dollar stock. And MOR is the symbol here. It was up 40% earlier today. It was up over, I think, $9.30. It's pulled back to about $8.75, Pete. They have a study that demonstrated clear benefits of one of their treatments for myofibrosis, I guess, or something like that, Pete. And wow, anytime somebody can announce a phase 3 result that's as positive as this one was versus the placebo, helping patients, extending life and all the rest, or, doing what this one did, that's something that people are going to get squeezed on, and they got squeezed hard today.
They did. 52-week highs, as you mentioned, John, got over $9. This is one I would want to keep a very close eye on, because obviously there's that next level, there's that last level, and that's, you've gone through phase 1, you've gone through phase 2, now you got phase 3. You have a strong safety profile. That's really important. They demonstrated all the benefits, as you just mentioned. I mean, that's really important. So this is a company that's just got one more hurdle to go over, and they just got to get that approval. They get that approval, I think this could be very, very pivotal move for this company to the upside. We'll see. They do have a high cash burn, so they need this to happen. They need this company to be, this treatment to be able to go through and give them that next level, John, because if they can, then all of a sudden that cash burn turns into free cash flow, because this thing will be out on the market. That would be something great for all of us, but particularly, obviously, for the patients, but for shareholders as well. That's something that's still out in the future, but this is something that what we're seeing today, I think the reaction is right, and I think it's going to be very, very interesting to see what this next, hurdle is. If they can get over that, I think they're on their way.
Well, it's anytime people have some disease, some malady that can be treated, and somebody comes up with a cure that actually passes all phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and then, like Pete says, they get the endorsement from the FDA. Yep, that's worth billions of dollars because it's time. How much would you pay for that time? All right, let's take a look, Pete, at the top plays of the week in our Red Zone Sports, shall we?
Let's do it.
Replay, Fields for more. Got him! Touchdown!
He's a baller, John. Chicago's got the right guy. They actually do.
Watch Purdy on this one.
There's the MVP. That's an MVP passing to an MVP.
Watch this guy, Pete.
Look at the speed.
And he gives the move.
Breaks out of a tackle, takes it down the sideline. He stays in bounds. He stays on.
Oh, how did he keep his footing?
Yep. Takes it all the way. That's the game winner.
That's the best team in the NFL. Them and San Francisco. Best two teams in the NFL right there. Baltimore and San Francisco. Unreal, John.
I loved watching Dallas play last night too, Pete.
I'll tell you, we've been not hard on Dak, but we've been waiting for him to play higher levels, right? Well, he played one of the highest levels playing Philadelphia, and Dak lit them up.
Yep.
Dak is actually, he's coming through, and it's great. I mean, I think it's fun. I think anytime Jerry Jones is a part of something like this, and the Dallas Cowboys and the Star and all that stuff, it just adds to everything, right? I mean, whether or not they go all the way to the Super Bowl or not, I don't think they will. But that defense, John, not so bad. And your guy, Micah Parsons, he's not Lawrence Taylor, but he ain't that far off either.
Yeah. I tell you what, Pete, 90,000 people there for Sunday Night Football in AT&T Stadium last night, too. There isn't a bigger crowd in pro football than Dallas. And they can even make it a little bit bigger, as you and I know, Pete, from being there. That's a pretty special place. And it can be so loud for those guys.
I'll tell you, one of the most special treats you and I ever had was when Jerry Jones reached out and said, hey, you guys want to come to the Giants game? Happens to be in Dallas. You can come and stay in our sit in the box up there. And we were like, in? That was awesome. I mean, how great was that? John?
Who was our driver, Pete?
Oh, it was Pat Summerall's guy, right? Or
That's
whatever?
right. No, yeah, he sent Pat Summerall to pick us up. That's a fact, folks. Yeah. That's a fact. He sent Pat Summerall, legend.
Yeah. That was awesome. And then we were up there, John. We were a little out of place, at least back then. No, I'm just kidding. But a little out of place because they had Billionaires Row. And we're sitting there going, well, I don't know. Mark Cuban? Sure, you're one of them. Jerry Jones and anybody in the Jones family? Yeah, I guess you guys are part of this thing too. I mean, it was like ding, 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 ding.
Walmart,
ding.
Michael Dell, all of that. He just see that down there? That's Billionaires Row there, Jon and Pete. Right there.
They couldn't have been nicer.
Oh yeah, he really couldn't have been. And he was very kind.
And John, how about a guy that everybody laughed at for $125 million to buy the Cowboys? Oh God, he's an idiot, right? I mean, Jerry lost his marbles. Well, they're worth like $6 or $7 billion now. I'd say that's a pretty good trade. I think, as Cardone would say, 10x. Well, that's a hell of a lot more than a 10x right there, man. That's like outrageous. All right, real quick, John, we got some fun sports, and then we're going to let everybody get back to the matters at hand. Any given Sunday. I'm calling it any given Sunday for this reason. You and I both know NFL stands for not for long. Well, it's not for long that you see a big flip in what's going on in the NFL in the second half of the season, right? I mean, this has been pretty outrageous, right? Any given Sunday. How about this? Pittsburgh Steelers, one of the greatest franchises in all of football. And having a decent year, but lacking a quarterback because of injury and this, that, and the other. They're going up against the Patriots, so the Patriots stink. They got no shot. Nope, they got a kid named Zappy who broke every passing record you could imagine in college. And he's the quarterback now for the Patriots. And, oh, by the way, Patriots beat him. So any given Sunday, right? How about this one? Chicago Bears, they're going up against Detroit. Detroit looks like, probably the shoe-in. They're 9-3. They're playing pretty good football. Well, nobody told Fields because Fields absolutely lit it up with his legs, with his arm, everything. Cleveland going up against the Jaguars. You know who Cleveland's quarterback is these days, John? Because you probably don't. It's Joe Flacco.
I do.
Joe Flacco, who's been resurrected after hitting the age of 58 or 60. They brought him back in. Got the gray beard. He's out there slinging it. Yeah, Cleveland won that game. The Bengals and the Colts. Well, the Bengals don't have Joe Burrow anymore, but they do have Browning, another guy who had an unbelievable college career. Nobody's ever heard of the guy, but he's pretty damn good, and all he's doing is getting Cincinnati an opportunity to get that much closer to the playoffs. Lastly, Houston's been on fire. You and I have been talking about that, the quarterback, C.J. Stroud, how great he is. Well, Zach Wilson decided to maybe step up a little bit, and Zach Wilson got the Jets, and they stunned Houston, I think, yesterday, John. So you've got all these very interesting storylines going out there. You could even talk about the Broncos. How about the Broncos? They stunk at the beginning of the year. I'm not a big fan of the coach, not a huge fan of Russell Wilson. But you know what? I know when I'm wrong and when I need to step up and admit it. And I got to say, Russell Wilson's playing pretty damn good. They beat the Chargers yesterday. They beat them into the ground. And this is the same team that gave up 70 points early in the year to the Miami Dolphins. And now, John, they're 7-6. They got a shot at getting into the freaking playoffs. Are you kidding me?
Playoffs?
Playoffs?
You're right.
What do you think, man? I mean, any given Sunday, it just shows you there is parity in the NFL more than people want to admit. And there's a heck of a lot of teams out there that are shocking other teams right now late in the season.
Yeah, well, Russell Wilson, Pete, yesterday was 21 for 33, sorry. 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. And like you say, they stomped on the Chargers. Mm-hmm. They knocked Herbert out, Pete. They had a guy playing quarterback for the Chargers named Easton Stick. Honestly, that's the dude's name. I never heard of this quarterback. Maybe he's not even a quarterback. Maybe he's a running back that they had to stick in there. No, actually, I know he was a quarterback. So stop with the hate mail. But he threw 24 passes, Pete. He almost completed half of them or something like that, so it wasn't terrible, but I've never heard of this guy.
Right.
And whatchamacallit, Justin Herbert's numbers were pathetic even before he was out, Pete. 45 QBR, 45. And you just got a $270 million payday. Wow. That's pretty bad.
Yeah, it's amazing, John. I think the NFL, there are 2 teams that stick out. We've been talking about it, Baltimore and San Francisco. After that, I guess you can start adding Dallas to that maybe, right? And there's a couple other teams, but there's a fight to get in. And I thought that this would be fun for our second topic. How about this? The NFC South, okay? Take a look at that division. There's not a team with a winning record. The entire division is under 500. So now you got to decide, okay, who is the best of the worst? And that's exactly what this is. Who's the best of the worst? You've got Carolina. They were the first team eliminated from any playoff opportunity. They stink, right?
They do.
Tepper's a lunatic. He decides to make this decision. Hey, look, I don't care about any of your coaching. I'm brilliant in the financial world, and I'm going to be brilliant in the sports world because you're taking this quarterback. Well, that hasn't worked out so good. And all the draft picks that they traded, John, that's a bit of a problem. So now you're left with just a couple of teams. Atlanta, they're pretty bad. But every once in a while, they actually look okay. They've got talent. They just can't get it all put together. So you got the Saints in Tampa. I don't know who you got to go to the playoffs, John, but I would just say this. The Saints kind of show flashes once in a while, but there's just something about Tampa. Maybe it's my bias being an old Buccaneer or whatever, but I kind of feel like Tampa with their defense and, quite honestly, with their quarterback, they've got a shot to actually maybe be over 500, but maybe not. Maybe they're an under 500 team that gets in the playoffs this year because the NFC South is just that bad. What do you think?
They are bad. And it's not even fun football to watch. In fact, Pete, I can't remember spending more than like maybe 10 minutes, not half of a quarter or anything. I mean, just 10 minutes watching any of those teams in that division play. They're not exciting. For the most part, you know, they're 500 teams, like you say, except for Carolina, of course, that can't find their backside. But yeah, they're just not good. And I'll be surprised if there aren't wholesale changes beyond Frank Reich in Carolina, Pete, because that team is just bad.
You know, sometimes an owner just has to step back and understand they do own it. They should have some sort of say in something, but there's got to be somebody in the room who's a football mind who's going to actually help them out, right? Now, Jerry Jones, you could say, well, he's involved, Pete. What about Jerry Jones? Jerry Jones played football. Jerry Jones, you know, he was involved. He was in Arkansas with Jimmy Johnson and all the rest of these big name guys that have been around the Cowboys for a while. So it's interesting to me that he's been as involved as an owner as he has been, John, just because, you know what, you got to have had at least some kind of experience out there, and you've got to have the trust in your GM, in your president, in your COO, in whomever is in your C-suite to make those kinds of decisions, because that's out of his realm. Now, there is an eye test out there. We all know that, but there's a lot more to it than just that. And I think sometimes that's the mistake by some of these owners when they kind of overstep that. That's a mistake, unless, you know, there's somebody who maybe has a little bit more experience in the game.
Well, like you've said, there are very few of these guys that played at any level. Jerry Jones did, and played at the University of Arkansas. So he wasn't just a kid that played in high school and liked it. But I think too many of the owners do, Pete, think that they can do it like Moneyball, and that they can win just by, you know, finding guys that can make a 4-yard pass or whatever. You got to be able to get the ball downfield, or you're not going to be able to open up the running lanes much. Even if you look at Philly yesterday, Pete. Yeah. Philly's got one of the best offensive lines in football, and last night they couldn't, you know, put together drives at all. So, you know, I think it does take a little bit more, and in particular, the head coach, you got to count on him to bring in the assistant coaches, so that, just like you said with Justin Fields, so that you use what he can do, not what the offensive coordinator thinks he needs to do.
Yeah, you got to coach the guy to his best ability and why you grabbed him in the first place, right? I mean, that's always been a very simple thing. You and I talk about it all the time. People just don't get it. These guys all draft a quarterback and try to make him into a passer, right? And that's not who they are. Now that Justin Fields is given a little bit more leeway to run once in a while, the guy's a freak show, John. I'm not saying he's the best quarterback in football or anything of that sort. I'm just saying let him be who he is, because that's what you drafted him for. His athleticism, why he is special. He's big, he's fast, he's all those things. Let him do what he's best at doing. You're going to get the best out of him.
I agree. And hopefully, after now having suffered through 3 offensive coordinators, they have figured it out. But knowing our Bears, Pete, I can't say that that's the case. Well, make sure you join us tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern time, folks, for the Rebel's Edge. We appreciate all of you joining us. Make sure you check out marketrebellion.com/get started. And by the way, we're getting started with our new book commercials today, Pete.
Yep.
Bang. The new book, It's Not an Option, is going to be out there now. So check out the commercials on TV, give them a call, get that book, and you'll be trading like us. See you tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern time.